Welcome to the inaugural episode of the DC Charter School Alliance Leaders in Conversation series, where we bring together charter school leaders for discussions about the city's educational landscape. I'm Ariel Johnson, Executive Director of the DC Charter School Alliance, and today we're focusing on student growth and achievement. If you like what you hear today and you're on our YouTube channel, like, subscribe, and share to hear more about what's happening in the DC Charter School community. Educators across the district are focused on student achievement. CAPE is one of the ways we measure growth, not the only way, and proficiency across grade levels. We saw charter schools increase their proficiency rates by an average of 2.7 percentage points in ELA and 3.6 percentage points in math. While there is certainly more work to do, there are many bright spots. Single-site charter schools nearly doubled their citywide increase in math proficiency at the 3+ level, and in wards 5, 7, and 8, communities that deserve our strongest support, charter schools continue to outperform the city average by significant margins. And I have to say, we are sitting in Ward 5 right now in Center City's makerspace, and I want to thank Russ for the opportunity to film this podcast here. Some schools saw exceptional growth. I'm thrilled to be joined by leaders whose schools made tremendous gains this year. With me today are Amy Helms, head of school at DC Scholars Public Charter School, Raymond Weeden, executive director of Thurgood Marshall Academy, and Russ Williams, president and CEO of Center City Public Charter Schools. Amy's school, DC Scholars, saw a 13-point increase in student scoring, 4 or higher in math, and a 9-point increase in English language arts. Both numbers far outpace citywide averages of approximately 3%. Congratulations, Amy. Russ leads a network that has seen growth across multiple campuses, including Capitol Hill and Congress Heights in both math and ELA, as well as Shaw and Petworth in ELA. Several of his schools landed in the top 10 citywide for both subjects at the elementary and middle school levels. Raymond leads Thurgood Marshall Academy, which grew 6.9 percentage points in ELA and 3.2 in math, and ranked among the top 10 schools citywide in both subjects. Today, we aim to explore the interventions and the strategies that are making a difference for DC students and how we can all learn from their successes and what challenges still persist. Okay, so turning to questions. Starting with you, Russ. Congratulations on launching this incredible makerspace. And you all, if you have not been here, it is truly incredible. If you are a hands-on learner like I am, you can build things, you can do podcasts. It is really remarkable and right in my neighborhood. So I feel very grateful that Russ is investing in our community in this way. Why did you decide to invest in the makerspace? And do you think hands-on learning and environments like this contributed to student achievement gains?
Thank you for the nice words about the space. Appreciate that. And yes, we strongly believe that hands-on science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. The thing about makerspaces, when you come visit when kids are here, you'll see that 80 or 90% of the time they're actually on their feet. It's active learning. They're learning collaboration. They're learning cooperation. They're learning to work together in groups. They're learning all of these college and career type skills, readiness skills that help students identify and understand interests beyond, English and math. And it creates a spark in terms of the joy of learning. And we get a lot of students that come in here for the first time and they're immediately on their way out going, when can I come back here? When can we get back here? And if you have an opportunity to visit and you walk in, you will see it's always a thrill to see just kids on their feet, popping back and forth between tables, talking to each other, trying to figure out what they're doing, putting things together, building things. So we're really pleased with the early returns on the space, and we strongly believe that, the district should have maker spaces in all 8 wards. And this is just the start of that work. So
Thank you for that, Russ. I want to ask you a follow-up. What's your favorite part of the makerspace?
Boy, I probably the core of the space, the big maker space, the lab where everyone comes together to start working on projects, because we have this studio as a finishing area, right? This is one of the spaces where you finish the product. The coding lab, the textile lab, the woodworking lab, those are all places where you go finish something that you started kind of in the heart of the maker space, which is the big open area when you first walk in, with lots of different tools, materials, equipment, things for kids to grapple with and to tinker with, if you will, and then to sort of start taking whatever they've started there and taking it into one of the finishing areas, and then actually building something or making something or creating something, depending upon which finishing room they're going into. Honestly, I think this space, the recording studio, might be my favorite. The fact that we've seen a lot of interest and activity up here, both with our students and with the community, and we knew that having some kind of space where you could both be on a podcast, for example, but also learn. We have the equipment for the kids to work the board, to do the back-end engineering, and to do the work like the pre-production work, post-production work. So you create like visuals for kids in terms of, oh, this is what that means. Maybe I can't be the talent. Maybe I could be an engineer or a producer or director. So lots of different opportunities that get opened up when kids see the work that goes into something like creating a podcast or creating a television show.
Thank you for that, Russ. And I love that it's really for kids, your littles all the way through your older students as well. I'll tell you my favorite two parts before I turn over to Amy. There's a circuit making situation downstairs that's really cool. I immediately was like, oh, this is how batteries work. Okay, maybe I can hotwire my car. And there's also, for our avid golf folks, you can 3D print a golf club. And yep, see, right, touche. And go ahead and practice your irons and maybe your drive, depending on where you are downstairs. So Amy's at DC Scholars, and she saw remarkable growth in math proficiency and English language arts at the 4+ level. I know you've invested a ton in tutoring, and this started years ago and expanded after-school programs. But what do you think you can attribute to that growth?
Yeah, I think Russ said something interesting that is like recapturing that spark and the joy of learning. And I think coming out of the pandemic, when everyone was deeply concerned about students' academic proficiency, there's a sense of like, let's double down. Let's, how can we spend more time doing sort of intensive academics? And the risk or the danger there is kids have no joy, no engagement, no desire to be in school. And one of the things that our team did coming out of that sense of like, how do we reimagine school, which we haven't really done very much of, kudos to you, Russ, for doing something different, is do some focus groups with families. And overwhelmingly, they were like, we want more foreign language. We want more art. We want more music. And so I think in sort of a risky way, because it was like, let's spend more time doing math and ELA, those are the tested subjects, I think we did listen and expanded programs. So now we have MEG Languages, which is a virtual program where kids can engage with a teacher that actually lives in Colombia through two-way video and like do actual Spanish instruction with a native speaker. We have various enrichment programs that happen during the school day and after school. So we have Whiz Kids Robotics. We have Soccer Shots that comes in and teaches soccer clinics, and then a whole host of extracurricular activities as the school day ends. And I think that is probably the biggest factor that contributed to like the rise we saw in attendance and just overall like I'm happy to come to school. I like school. I feel a sense of joy and connection to these people who are my teachers, which is foundational to all the other things that we did. You mentioned tutoring. We did. I was probably the biggest high impact tutoring skeptic. Because like who these random people who don't know our curriculum, who don't know our kids are going to come in and somehow like teach in a way that's going to meet the needs of our kids who might have a lot of unfinished learning from the pandemic. And it's really hard to be a teacher. So curriculum is really difficult to digest. So honestly, I didn't really buy it. But it was kind of like, it can't hurt, right? It's extra time. Let's do it. Well, the data came back immediately and it was evident. The kids who were in these kind of tight small groups or one-on-one intensive dosage were far outperforming kids who weren't in those interventions. So there was no question, this is where we have to go. And then I think because we saw such gains on that, it pushed us to start thinking differently about our whole school day. And I think one of the most innovative things that we did, particularly last year, and our principal, Ms. Redeemer, deserves all the credit for this, which is like, why are we not in small groups for Tier 1? Mm-hmm. Like, why are we not in small groups more of the day? And because we have teacher associates that allow us to do some flexible staffing, we can flex our schedule so that kids sort of rotate through their Tier 1, their Tier 2, and then the kids who require the Tier 3, the tutoring, the more intensive interventions can go there. And so I think just that the advantage of being a single site LEA where it was like principal is having a great, brainstorm over Thanksgiving break. She comes back in December and says, this is what I want to do. It only takes us a week or two to put a schedule together and we can make it happen. There's nobody we have to connect with. There's no approval process. Like if this is what's going to work for kids, that's what we're going to do. And immediately the kids loved it. They like begged for it. The teachers were like, I can get so much more done with these 8 kids in 30 minutes than with my whole class when I'm trying to get to everybody in this moment. Kids get way more feedback and feedback on their writing. So I think those are probably the biggest things that we did, along with our amazing kids. They worked really, really hard.
I am going to just go back to something you said at the very beginning. You talked about focus groups. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of that level of parent engagement, particularly in a ward where we don't always engage parents the way that we should? And what sparked that? What made you think that was important to do? So obviously, it yielded some really great outcomes.
Yeah, and I mean, some of it was started as just conversations, like, you know, you're hearing this, or through enrollment, people saying, oh, well, we might not choose your school because you don't have X program. So kind of that was the impetus of it, of, you know, can we like actually get some people in a room and really listen? And we did it professionally. We worked with an organization that facilitated the focus group. So it wasn't just, you know, me as head of school saying, tell me what's going on. There was an outside person. So allowed families to really like open up and say directly, I think, how they really felt about the school, what was working for them. And there was a sense of like, we love the school, we love the teachers, we love the community, like this feels really great, but we want to know that our kids are getting X that kids down the street are getting, or that this could exist, or I've heard of this program, I would love that to exist in our school. And then taking that and sort of collating that, we also do surveys. So to sort of have the multiple pieces of feedback together. And then I think actually making the investment and saying, you know, this is actually what our families really want, and it is our purpose to serve them. And this is what they're asking for, and this is what they're saying is best for their kids. And they know what's best for their kids. So we're going to deliver that for them, and they were right.
On that same note about like knowing what's best for students, you talked about teachers' reaction to the high-impact tutoring in the small groups and having more time to spend with their kids. Do you think that will contribute to teacher retention and a stronger culture?
Definitely. That connection, the relationship with students that you can get in a small group, it also, that flexibility allows for specialization in what they're preparing, so it can reduce the load on their prep. When I know I am preparing for this group, and this group, and I know exactly what those groups need, it allows me to be a lot more targeted and intentional. Now, of course, you need like all the instructional coaching and the support for teachers so that they can unpack the data, that they know exactly, well, if that group is struggling with X, here's a recommendation for how you meet their need. But they were immediately excited about it. There's definitely the hiccups of, the first couple of days of like trying out the schedule and does this work? And this group is here. No one was helping move that group. Like there's hiccups. But I think because teachers were so invested in it, they were very willing to connect with their leaders and say like, oh, hey, it didn't actually work for this group to be here. Or I want to see this group, or I need this group longer. And I think that sort of like sense of team of us all touching all kids and all wanting to see them succeed was really exciting. We celebrated the growth. That's sort of a staff team builder. Every staff member felt a sense that they contributed to that. It wasn't just the math teachers. It wasn't just the reading teachers. But like even the front desk person she came up to me afterwards and she was like, we were like a part of, we were a part of this. We helped, talk to families and build their investment. So I think that sort of sense of we're all in it together, many hands, creates a team feel that we very much want to have and that we want our kids to experience and know that there's a lot of adults who care about them and want them to succeed.
That's helpful. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Raymond.
Morning.
Morning. Raymond's at Thurgood Marshall Academy, who saw really fast growth in ELA, but like a lot of us, math is still a challenge. But I want to talk about, because you have our older scholars, what are you doing to build on the successes that you've seen and also acknowledging challenges that just all of our students are experiencing right now, especially our high school kids?
Yeah. So one, this space is amazing. So Russ, again, thank you all for having us here. So at TMA, we receive students from close to 35 to 40 different schools across the city, many from DC Scholars and Center City, but just all types of skill sets are walking in our door. Our building was designed and our school was designed to actually serve students who are just not prepared for high school with the intent of getting them into a college of best fit. And we continue on that promise. Anything that we saw this past year, and it sounds like very similar to the other guests, is that like this is actually a building upon the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years of this body of work. I remember when we first started talking about high impact tutoring, there was an outside group that was going to come in during the peak of the pandemic. We immediately embraced that and see if that will work. And over the last 2, 3, 4 years, we just kept iterating on like what would it look like and how would it work best for us. And so we're now in a place this past winter when we brought folks on, most of the tutors who are in our building are alum of our school. And so we have early career folks who are starting out as tutors in our building who also understood what it was like to be a student in our building. And that was, you were talking about the winter break or Thanksgiving break innovation. That was the innovation of our head of school or essentially our principal, Malika May. She said, well, why are we hiring these outside folks when we can just do it internally on our own? So now we have this kind of internal pipeline allowing people who used to be part of TMA as students who are now here in an early career starting as tutors. A couple of them now have become full-time teachers. And that's the type of work that we've been doing for 2, 3, 4 years. So we think the English curriculum that we picked up, Fish Tank, in 2023, our teachers are just stronger at it, right? And stronger at implementing it, stronger have digested it. They know the wrinkles of it. And so now they're able to do tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 kind of intervention within that curriculum with the support of the English tutor in their classroom. So we're going back to that small group work that in elementary schools we see work all the time. And it is funny, like a lot of things that we are doing at TMA, I will argue that I probably am bringing over from when my days when I was an elementary school principal with Amy at a different LEA, because small group works, and we know small group works. And I think the reason why we saw the growth in English be faster than math is that we were focused on that coming out of the pandemic. We need kids to read. We need students to write. We need students that is culturally relevant curriculum for them, and we want to make sure that they have the best access to that. Now we're seeing the same thing in math and doing a lot of work and focusing on like what does it mean to be a mathematician in terms of the adults in the building, because teaching math is tough. As a former as a math teacher who was currently a school leader. And it is tough because like the algebra and geometry, while they are still under the umbrella of math, they're two different languages. Yes. Geometry versus calculus, it is similar, but it's not exactly the same. So you have to have people who just know math in and out. And if they don't know math yet, and that's okay, we need to take the time to develop them to get stronger at that. And so we're really happy this current year we're working with Empower K-12 and part of their math hub and really getting some work in there to like really develop our math team. We're focusing on math coaching and an online curriculum to help with the tutoring to really pinpoint what students need. And I anticipate, just based off of the last couple of years, like our math growth is indicating that our students are growing fast. And so what we are now trying to figure out is like, what is the growth that it would look like to have high achievement? And that's a trickier puzzle to hack. I do want to also just note that like we are one of the few, I guess middle school does the same thing if they have a standalone 6th grade, but like high schools have an entry kind of level that also is tested right away. And that's not a norm when we think about testing. So we're testing 9th graders who are in our door maybe for 8 months and say, good luck, see what you can do. And so what we also see is that students who are with us in that second year, their growth is just significantly higher because that 9 months now becomes 21 months that they're with us before they're taking that test. And so we're excited about that.
Yeah, I want to just highlight a few things that you named. It makes sense that out of the pandemic you were focusing on ELA, and the reality of that's where the funding and the resources were too. We had a lot of resources being put towards literacy, and now folks have realized, and as we all knew as educators, that literacy is just as important as math, and we're seeing resources come into the city to focus on that. So I'm glad that you're taking advantage of that and working with our partners. And I do anticipate that, like many of our schools, will see a wide swing given the resources that are being put into it. There were a couple things that you named that I want you to highlight. You said at the very beginning, you are getting students from 30 to 40 different middle schools coming into your high school. Can you talk about what that looks like and how you adapt to those challenges?
Opportunities. So we're going to go with opportunities.
Opportunities.
It's a great jambalaya of trying to make it all work. So we are working with students who are from different neighborhoods and working with students who understand DC in a different way. And the one thing that we are really good at, and for 25 years, TMA has been known for, is building strong relationships with the young people in our building. And so we can make the case that every student in the building, actually the students make the case on their surveys, that they have at least one trusted adult in our building. That trusted adult is actually, their job is to try to figure out like what makes that student work, what's going to get them in the building, what's going to bring them joy, how can we celebrate that. And one of the things that we did during the peak of the pandemic when we were all remote is that we said everyone with a TMA paycheck, we're going to take the roster and we're going to divide it up evenly. So everybody has 2 to 3 students who are just yours. Like you call them, you text them, you make sure they're okay. In terms of supplies during the peak of the pandemic, well, we kept that. And so like I have 4 students who are mine that I want to keep up with. We call them twice a month just to make sure the families are okay. And that actually helped us to get to a place of like, even though it's 35 different schools, we just recognize that 13, 14, 15-year-olds are 13, 14, 15-year-olds. And so when they are able to be seen as like human and the parents are being able to celebrate it as the hard work they have done for those 15 plus years, the work of like forcing them or encouraging them to stay after school for office hours or to go to homework help or to work with a tutor that they just met is a lot easier because they know that we're not going to put something in front of them or someone in front of them who is going to do anything but help them and not hurt them. One of the things that we're really proud about, and we talk about innovation and sometimes this doesn't get highlighted, is that one of the things we also focus on as a city is like making sure that we have the right mental health supports for our students and our adults over the last couple of years. At this point, last year, we saw about 150 of our students were at least engaging in some sort of mental health service of a school of 370. So like we make the space available for students that have a crisis or have a thing or just want a space to talk to have that on site. And then we are now, this past year, we also have 2 days of adult focus mental health counseling within our school building, right? So like it's this like balance of all these people are coming in. We're going to make sure they're okay. We got to get the math and reading scores up. We want them strong as possible. But we can't do that without making sure that there's good humans. And so thinking about the world in a different way and thinking about how to approach those 40-plus schools and, you know, student and people, team members who are coming as far as Pennsylvania to come work in our building, we have to think of as individuals, but also think of how do we make it as familial as possible.
Yeah, if you all know Raymond, that makes sense. It's very Maslow, right? You can't educate the kid unless they have all of the other
According
things they need.
According to the book, that's what I understand, yeah.
Yeah. But that's just that's how you show up as a leader and how you show up as a partner in this space. So that makes a ton of sense to me. I love the idea of also mental health supports, not just for your students, but also for your adult staff, because we don't talk enough about how the impact of the world and the things that are going on, it's hard for educators as well, and they have to come in and still do their job and do it at a high level. And if we don't pour into our educators, we will lose them.
I mean, our number one, and maybe it's different for other schools, our number one line item is the salaries for the adults. Right. So if the adults are not well, we're actually investing in something that's not going to get the benefits we want.
Yeah. And the trusted educator piece, or trusted person piece in your school, if you started that in the pandemic, that means that for the most part, you probably had one person that was that child's support through the entire
We rotate it every year, so just to make sure that, one, students graduate and students leave. So we try to keep the people who we have, but we're not always, but yeah.
That's fantastic, though. I mean, I'm sure we can all think back to a teacher that we went back to time and time again. Mine was Mr. Stanley. I was not a math kid, and I went back to Mr. Stanley every year because he knew that I wasn't dumb. He understood that, like, I just had a really hard time in algebra, but I was great at geometry. And I would come back to him in my junior year of Algebra 2, and he's like, I don't teach you, but you do, sir. Right. But you do.
You signed up for it.
You signed up for these 4 years. So I'm glad that you're implementing some of those things because that's important for students. I want to turn it back to the entire group now. Let's talk about how you all prioritize your resources. So I'm going to start with Russ. So how did you prioritize where to invest resources, whether that's staff time, funding, or attention?
I think for us, it always goes back to like what our data is telling us in terms of where the needs are, right? Like, and I think in the same themes for us, like that Raymond and Amy touched on in terms of like what they're talking about through like a lot of the things that they're doing. It's like increasing the sense of belonging in their school, which is something TNTP highlighted in a report a couple years ago. And, you know, one of our campuses does that work particularly well, our Brightwood campus and our Congress Heights campus, 2 of them do it really well. And so like making sure that we're talking to all of our teams about like this is an important piece of the instructional core, right? Because it's high quality curriculum, high quality teaching, and student engagement. And the higher the students where their belonging is high, then the engagement is high. And that's what drives better outcomes in schools, right? There's only 3 things that drive outcomes in schools: quality materials, quality teaching, and then student engagement. You can have quality materials and quality teaching. If students aren't engaged, they're not learning. So you have to have students who are engaged. And in a similar vein, like what Amy was speaking about in terms of the experiences for kids, like this makerspace is an experience for kids. It makes them excited to go to school. We have arts blocks that are like normal, right? We cut math and ELA to increase art blocks, and in a lot of instances our scores went up because the students are more engaged, they're happier, like to attend to the ELA and the math. I mean, I'm sorry, did any of you go to school and have a 90 or 100-minute math block? I doubt you did, right? Like, no, most people didn't.
No.
So that and if you did, you probably wouldn't have tolerated it. So, and if you're 13 or 14, it's not how you want to spend 100 minutes straight. So having the variety of experiences that increase students' sense of belonging and having the connections with the adults, like one of the things that we preach across all of our buildings, right, is that, and again, a lot of credit to Rita Pearson, who the Every Child Needs a Champion on a TED Talk on YouTube. The hardest children show up every day, right, because they need someone to be their champion, right? They need to connect with someone. So we talk a lot about like connecting with our kids, like having and again, especially middle schoolers, but like almost all kids know when an adult doesn't care, right? And they're not going to learn from that adult. They're not going to learn from that adult. So if you want to do this work, like you have to show up for the kids and you have to let them know that you care about them, right? So these things like this sense of belonging, adults who care, right? Creating lots of varied experiences that help you leverage and do better in math and ELA and science and social studies because you have all these other enriching activities and things that spark the kids' interest and make them want to be in school. It's all like it all kind of comes together to kind of create the recipe for like driving better outcomes for kids.
Follow up to that. We breezed past this in the introduction, but I want you to remind people where all of your campuses are because Center City is of this table is our small network, high performing, but covers a good chunk of the city. So can you just, wards and neighborhoods?
Yeah, sure. So starting like up north, we have in Ward 4, Brightwood and Petworth, Brightwood being relatively close to the Maryland border, but down a little bit. And then coming down in the middle of the city, Shaw. And then coming over a little bit to the northeast, we have Capitol Hill and Noma/Trinidad, and then going over to southeast, Congress Heights. And the thing with our schools, when you look at a map of D.C., is they're kind of in the middle third, which is why we're Center City. Yep. Like all of them, they're in different parts of the city, but they're generally somewhere in the middle of the map, if you will, as you look at it vertically. So we're in all 6 of those neighborhoods. And then the makerspace, as you noted, is located in Ward 5. Not too far from the New York Avenue, Montana Avenue exchange, like just outside Ivy City. And we were intentional about locating this here with 6 schools because for us it was important that our poles, which in this instance the furthest 2 campuses are Brightwood in the northwest and Congress Heights in southeast, that those kids had equidistant like trips, that nobody had to travel more than any other students, right? So we tried to keep the travel time to around 20-25 minutes for our poles, and this allowed us to accomplish that at both of those poles, with everyone else being a little bit closer. So the geography of this place was intentional as well.
I love that, the small ways we think about equity for students. I asked the question about where you are because trying to create a sense of belonging amongst that many different cultures and communities, because we know D.C. is one city, but students operate differently in wards 5 versus 6 versus 7. Like it is. And so I just really appreciate how you are thinking about belonging and culture and supporting students all across the city because that's a really tough thing to do.
No, I think it is. And I think we work to empower our principals to like kind of meet the students where they are. And just because we have multiple enrichment blocks at every school, it doesn't mean they're the same, right? We might have drama and music over here, and then they might have foreign languages and STEM over there. Like it just, and a lot of it is, as Amy indicated, family and student driven. Our Brightwood campus, which is another one of our high performing schools, famously at the start of each year, because the 8th grade, the kids change, right? I always ask 8th graders, what kind of clubs and activities would you like to make sure we have this year? And then they get as many of the staff to do the top 10 or 12 things so that all students have access to a variety of activities. Even if only 3 or 4 kids are interested, if that was their 12th thing, they try to make sure they have like around a dozen offerings so that there's kind of something for everybody. And all of the staff participates. And again, it really increases the student's sense of belonging and, oh, there's a fun activity for me to do after school here. And all of those things matter.
That's probably more extracurricular activities than you see at a typical school. So that's fantastic.
It's a lot.
So that's a lot. Yeah.
It is.
I'm going to turn the same question over to Amy. How did you think about investment in resources? Again, not just monetarily.
Yeah. I mean, I think Raymond stated that, like, you know, the number one line item that you're contributing to are your educators. So I think we've thought a lot about talent and how we're attracting talent and retaining talent. And of course, coming out of the pandemic when there was this sense of people might not want to do this job. This is a really difficult job that requires you to get up extremely early in the morning and come in person, you know, and not be behind a computer screen, have to really engage, you know, in some really beautiful, moving relationships, but also experience a level of challenge in relationships, both with colleagues and with students. And so I think we've thought a lot about what are our systems and structures that develop and sustain those people so they feel like they're growing. So I think the real investments that we've made are in sort of the instructional coaching and assistant principals to, you know, give people weekly observations to make sure that they are someone who meets with them every single week and says, okay, what are your lessons for next week? Let's talk them through together. What's what's highest leverage here? What are you going to do about these 5 kids who struggled last week? What's your plan? What's your approach? And then, you know, this was controversial and we've debated amongst our team, but we do offer a lot of, you know, performance bonuses to staff. So both for their sorts of student performance, either in a daily attendance or in academic performance on our interim assessments, and also on sort of how they're evaluated. So if you're a highly effective staff, you can earn a pretty sizable bonus. If you're an effective staff, you can earn a sizable bonus. So that we're creating a sense of, like, if you're really good and you're delivering results, there's a place for you here for a long time. And that, you know, I think this is one of the things DCPS did really well in their teacher impact system, but, like, you don't have to become a principal. You don't have to become a school leader. You can make meaningful compensation as an amazing classroom teacher. And that's a constant challenge and tension for us as you have to make tough trade-offs. And we're facing a little more budget uncertainty in the coming years. But I think we're going to still try to figure out how to make that work. And fortunately, there have been a large number of investments in high-impact tutoring. We're seeing, as Raymond mentioned, Empower K-12 and other groups start to invest in math. So how we can make some of those trade-offs, if we can get some outside external funding for HIT, that will allow us to take some of those resources and invest them back in our teachers and our instructional leaders who are doing that work every single day.
And I just have to name that really is just budget allocation, because not that this is a policy podcast, not this particular episode, but we don't get funding for those sorts of investments, not for performance bonuses in that way.
No.
We can address that on the next episode about why that's important.
Bring us back.
We'll bring you back. Takes. We have so many takes. But I do want to just name that is an investment and a shifting and a reallocation of resources to be able to do that. I do want to follow up just on one thing you talked about. I mean, Russ just said one of the pillars of performance is having quality educators. You talked about teacher recruitment. How are you thinking about that? Because you can't have achievement without strong investment in your teachers. And it's not just, yes, it's sure you can pay teachers more, you can provide performance bonuses, but there's a recruitment aspect of that to get the right people in the door. Can you share what that looks like so that that other people maybe can learn?
Through a lot of thinking and reflection, I think we've landed on some non-negotiables of, like, a successful, not just teacher, a successful employee, a successful person at DC Scholars is going to embody a certain set of core traits. And what are the ways that you can, through the interview process, both assess and look for those things, but also be really upfront and transparent with people and say, like, this is what you're signing on for, and this is, like, why we do what we do, and want to make sure that, you know, you're going to be the kind of teacher that prepares deeply for your lessons. That means having them printed out or marking them up or having a system where you're annotating those lessons. You're comfortable with someone coming into your classroom and saying, hey, okay, come here. Here's what I think you could do differently, or have you looked at that group over there, or I have a suggestion. If you ask this question, I think you're going to get deeper. Or so not everybody wants that. And so being really transparent about what we're looking for. And then I think, you know, it sounds basic and maybe even a little trite, but it's people who are doing it for a purpose that is greater than themselves, that are doing it for kids and want to see the school succeed. And then people who are hungry and really open to growth, in lots of different ways, that are comfortable with someone, giving them some tough feedback, or having someone say, like, Amy, you were really wrong about high impact tutoring. It is actually working. So let go of some of your preconceived notions, look at data, be flexible, listen. And so I think we're looking for those kind of people. And if you're interested, you can apply. Look on our website. But I think when you find teams of those people, it's a lot more fun to do the really hard work. And you want to do it with other people who are equally invested in that. And you then want to be the person who gets to walk across the stage, and we do like a staff honor roll, but you like get an award or acknowledgement because you did really great work, but you don't get that just kind of for showing up. You really do have to do some hard work to get that acknowledgement, but then to have your peers acknowledge and celebrate you for doing that too. It's a lot more fun that way.
And when you've identified those folks, like doing everything you can to hang on to them, like is really also key, right? Like in the point Amy was making, a lot of really good teachers want to go into leadership, and so you have to almost like create alt pathways or better paying pathways, master teacher, department head, whatever it is that is attractive to them and then keeps them in the classroom, because you end up having like a glut of people who want to be in leadership and really are great teachers, and you'd really love to keep them in the classroom as much as you can.
Also, I really appreciate your acknowledgement of what sounds like 360 feedback, because it's hard for people to want to take it if you yourself as a leader can't, so just thank you for that. And Russ, to your point, absolutely. We hear so much of that, right? Like some of our best educators. I mean, look at you three. All teachers, former teachers, right? And now in leadership. But I'm sure at some point your former school leader would have wanted to keep you, but thank you for what you do. Please don't leave us. Turning over to you, Raymond, for the same question. Different ways that you've invested.
What has been shared already is this very similar. I mean, the more that we can think about one TNTP data or whatever your survey data that you're getting back is like, I love the fall data, because like, oh my goodness, we're on the right track. But I didn't see that this bus that just hit me that I now need to like fix is coming my way. And so it's an opportunity for us to pivot and switch. I mean, the joy of being a charter school is I would say myself and two other people, we are the central office, right? And so like they knock on my door and say, hey, we want to change this. And so being able to show that we can do that. And when I say they knock on the door, that's the 11th grader who is coming demanding something different. That's also the teacher who's been there for 18 years saying there's a different pathway they could do it. And generally what I will say and what our team says is that if you can come up with like how we can get there in a way that like can make sense, we'll help you figure out the rest to implement it. Because we have an incredibly smart team in that building, and way smarter than I am on a daily basis, because they're in the trenches looking at what works for students. So our team really does feel that they can adjust and fix and change things when they have the data and the kind of like innovational approach to kind of like solve for it. One thing that we kept getting dinged at every year is like professional development opportunities. And there was only so much that we can do on our, at the time, it was a weekly meeting that we were doing. And then we kind of like reduced the number of weekly meetings to like every other week. And then we realized that the issue isn't the number of meetings, it's actually probably us. So we went out and like looked at who are actually the experts in the field to really provide the professional development that like and training that would be good for them. And so we partner with folks like the co-op, or partner with folks like School Leader Lab, or partner with folks like Jounce, who does a lot of our coaching in the building, because like there are people who are just talented and skilled to do those type of things. And yes, we can probably develop our team to get to that point, and they're ready to support us right now. And so there was like a humility that our academic team and myself also said, well, maybe we can probably figure this out, but we're going to get there a lot faster with their support. And when we start going back to those English growth scores, like we started working with Jounce 2 years ago, and I'm not surprised that the English team that's been working with them for 2 years is now that much stronger and able to implement great things. And so I would say that the feedback loop, which has come up a couple of times, is actually how we kind of decide whether to invest. I love a pilot. Like, oh, why don't we try it out and see if it's going to work? I fear a pilot too, because so typically they work. And they're like, oh, now I got to figure out where to find the resources to do this. And high impact tutoring was that. I mean, it was 100% funded externally for a while, and now it's not. But I know it's the right thing to do. And so, like, what does that mean for like how we structure our budget to make sure that we get to that point?
Yeah, I want to just highlight 3 things that I've heard. So teacher retention, the importance of that from Russ. Amy talked about being able to have the characteristics and qualities to be able to take feedback, understand, shift, pivot, among other things that you shared. And then Raymond, you just shared what sounds like, okay, we have to do some self-reflection on what we're doing and then be able to pivot as a staff. I also want you to just say one more time, you are central office.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there were 2 others. No, we can call it that. But yes.
I just want to remind people of that who are listening when they are like, why are things not happening at the pace they should be happening? Because the head of the school, the executive director, is the central office. There is no body behind them. There's not 100 people to be able to, mitigate challenges. It is just the people who are on the front lines every day. It's Russ running around to apparently 6 different neighborhoods to make that happen, right? And so I just want to put a finer point on that. Russ, Amy, Raymond, it has been fantastic talking to you. If you liked what you heard, there'll be more of these conversations. But also, I definitely want to double tap what our leaders just said, a push to our policymakers. This work does not happen if our schools are not fully funded, if we're not fully investing in our schools, and if we're not giving leaders the resources they need to be able to focus on what they do best, educating kids, and not the administrative work, and not figuring out how they're going to pay their teachers. And we know it's a tough time right now. We recognize that. We all live in the same DC. But if we don't invest in education now, there's no coming back from that. So I push our policymakers to get into our schools, really listen to what our leaders are saying, and beyond testimony, really spending some time learning from them so that we can see students' achievement and growth across the city grow. Thank you so much for your time. Really
Thanks for having us.
We appreciate it.